Well, hey guys, welcome back. So, civil rights were certainly a very important part of what Johnson was able to do as president, especially early on. The other thing that's really important to understand as president is he was incredibly interested in this kind of domestic policy and especially social services that can help, especially people in poverty. What do we do to help provide equal opportunity for everybody? Not just now thinking about race, but also thinking about class and income. So, as you can see here, there's a book written by Michael Harrington called The Other America. It was published in 1962. Think of this as this isn't a novel. This is a book like The Jungle. It's like a muckraker. We didn't really call him that, but revealing problems that need to be solved. And what Harrington does in this book, and this becomes his ideas become very prominent, is he's really starting to reveal the real extent of poverty in our country. Remember, the 50s was all about prosperity and everybody's doing great and we're buying all these products and we got our cars and we're building roads, we're living in the suburbs, and oh, it's great. Income is going up, the middle class is exploding in size, and it's great. And he's basically arguing, well, yeah, but there is a lot of people who are really struggling and in poverty, which, by the way, that's not a huge surprise. There's always poverty. However, what we get with Harrington is this idea that how do we get them out of poverty? Because for the longest time, to a certain extent today, we say, how do you get out of poverty? Well, it's about this is what America is. You get a good education. Everybody has a public education. You get yourself a good education. You work really hard. You get that education. I'm talking like high school. And then from there, maybe you can get, a good job. Maybe you go to college, and college is much more inexpensive back then. And you can find your career that way. But that's how it works. You work hard, you keep moving up. That's how you succeed. That's how you get yourself out of poverty. But what was he was finding was that it's not that easy. That he created, we're seeing this culture of poverty. These different barriers that made it really, really difficult for people to get out of this system. So, for example, maybe you're living in a city in the north, say Chicago, and you're living in this cheap apartment, and it's really drafty in the winter, so you never get too warm, and you get sick, and you don't have much access to health care. Your attendance suffers at school, your grades suffer at school. Maybe you end up having to drop out, or maybe you just aren't successful, or maybe you miss a lot of work because of it. And then, in your desperation, and then people start to turn to alcohol and drug use. And what he's suggesting is that there's got to be some other ways to fix this system. It's not just your desire to work hard might not be enough. It might be something you have to have, but it might not be enough to get out of this. So, point is, this becomes very influential. A lot of people disagree with him too. But people who did agree with him was John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson. Now, Kennedy obviously died before anything could happen, but Johnson, on the other hand, well, he's ready. This is what he saw as what he could do as president, not just civil rights. Let's attack this problem of poverty. And here he is. This is where one of the places where he kind of launched his ideas of how to solve this issue. It's either West Virginia or Kentucky. Visits a poor family. A lot of people take pictures. You can notice here his demeanor is very different from those other pictures I showed you of the treatment, right? He's really kind of commiserating and, empathizing with this person. And he could, because remember, he grew up poor and in rural areas. And so what Johnson does is he literally declares an unconditional war on poverty. So in his State of the Union address, just months after he takes office, he says, look, we are going to go after poverty. And I like the way they phrase it. We're going to defeat it like as if it's a war. And so remember, okay, first of all, there's already some programs in place. Remember the New Deal under FDR we talked about, the alphabet soup, and there is there's Social Security, there's different welfare programs, there's different, help for, all sorts of different programs anyway. And so he wants to add on to that. And one of his ideas is that, look, he just doesn't want to give money to people. That would be a handout, because he argued that wouldn't work in the future. Instead, he wants to provide some opportunities to find people jobs, education, so then we can have success in the long run. So real quick, just some quick examples, and I don't have them all written down here. I don't describe them all in detail, but just to give you an idea of what he's doing. The Job Corps, which is in the cities, especially inner cities, help find jobs for people, especially young people, like 16 to 21 years old. VISTA, which stands for Volunteers in Service to America. VISTA, where you would get like volunteers, like think college graduates who have some skills that they can contribute maybe before they launch into their career. They can go into cities, or not just cities, but poor rural areas, to take advantage of what they're. Sorry about that, I got interrupted. So VISTA, you'd get college graduates in that maybe could help education or building up infrastructure, different programs there. By the way, both of those programs still exist today. Also, he had what he called the Community Action Program. So the idea is that he would try to get the local community involved in the decision making as to what programs would be funded, because his worry is that the federal government from Washington D.C. would identify, okay, this city, you need to do this, this, and this, and the city would be like, hey, we'd like to have a voice, we'd like to be a part of what you're doing. And so they created this community action program to help give a voice to the people who are actually were purportedly helping. This, by the way, was less successful. This was complicated, and one of the criticisms of the War on Poverty and his programs overall is it was too top down. I mean, the federal government was doing too much and not taking into account the local needs. And then finally, Head Start, again, something you may have heard of. This is essentially government-funded pre-K, so for like 3 and 4-year-olds, to help them prepare for kindergarten. So the idea here is that, in poorer areas, you might have young kids that just really, it's not that they can't read, because you really don't really learn how to read too much until kindergarten, but they never really seen a book, or don't really, or not in a household that reads a lot, or talks about education, or that culture of education isn't there. So the Head Start program is supposed to, give a head start to these kids as they enter into kindergarten, to make sure so they don't fall behind right away. Okay? So that's that War on Poverty. So actually, I know I'm breaking this up into little parts, but hopefully that's not too annoying, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to stop here. We talked about his first kind of plan, but then we're going to get to his election.